It's time for Libra season and the fall equinox. And this is an interesting time for fall in the northern hemisphere and for spring in the southern hemisphere. But also, this chart has a little bit more going for it. And I want to go through the whole thing with you now. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen so that you can actually follow along on the chart to see what we're looking at as the sun ingresses or moves into Libra to initiate this changing of the seasons with an equinox of equal parts daylight and darkness in the day as the sun begins to have less and less time of daylight heading us into the solstice in December. So what we're looking at here is, of course, the primary thing, the sun has moved into Libra. So as we approach this time, we see that the sun is actually opposite the sign that the sun is exalted in. So if you look here, you're going to see an opposition with Neptune simply because it's a very close degree to the cusp thing. And this program allows for more degrees than I perhaps would for this. I probably would give it a 3-degree thing. So this would have to be Neptune at 27 or 28 for me to still think that that opposition was in effect at this time. So what we're looking at is actually the sun projecting its opposition to Aries rather than Pisces. These two are the signs that oppose each other. When the sun comes into Aries, we've experienced spring in the northern hemisphere, the beginning of the zodiacal new year, and fall in the southern hemisphere. Aries, for partly that reason, is where the sun is exalted. So if we think about essential dignities, which is just the rulerships that the planets have, the sun, as many people know, rules Leo, but it is exalted and very welcomed in Aries. So the opposite of those might not be the strongest places for the sun. So we see that for Leo, the opposite is Aquarius. When the sun is in Aquarius, it is considered to be in detriment or just out of its element, out of its home, not where it has all of its resources to do what it would normally do. And then in this case, when it is opposite of its exaltation, it is considered to be in fall, which is where the sun is now entering in Libra. So being in fall, again, just simply means that it does not have the reputation here or the ability to be as welcomed here. So we just think about the essential nature of the sun and the essential nature of Libra. Those two aren't really the most fitting of puzzle pieces. That doesn't mean that it's bad. It just means that it gives a less solar expression to the sun at this time. So the sun, rather than being focused on more leonine things, on the self-expression, on the projecting of light, the sun is more focused at this time on the balance of light, the equinox even. So thinking about it in that context is a lot more helpful than allowing a generic astrology program to tell you that you're just bad because your sun was born in fall. That's not the case. I know a lot of Libra suns. I know a lot of Libra people with prominent Libras, and actually there are a ton of them in my life, and I don't know what I would do without them. So thank you for who you are if you have prominent Libra in your chart. And that means we are also coming into the solar season of Libra. So happy solar return and birthday if it is that you are a Libra sun. So let's look at the context of this season a little bit so that we can understand exactly what we're looking at when we move into Libra season. What can we expect maybe a little predictively when we're looking at Libra being the season of choice? Now, I did say that there's a little extra going on, and that's because back in Aries season, the beginning of the zodiacal new year, when we would have set the chart for the year, there are a couple qualifiers that get kind of confusing when you're looking at what's the condition of the year going to be. And one of Abu Mashar's qualifiers is that if the beginning of the year, so March 21st in Aries season, if when this happens, we see that I want to make sure I'm on the right chart here. Hang on, let me get into cycles 2023 because that was the moon. So let me get into the equinox, Aries. Okay, so back on the 20th of March, when the sun came into Aries, we see that we had a Virgo rising. And this is for roughly around Washington, D.C., since that is the capital of our country. I like to place it there. So just to be super thorough, we'll do Washington, D.C. here and cast the chart. And we can see at that time, the sun, moving it forward about a minute for difference, is still in Aries, and we still have the Virgo rising. Virgo is a mutable sign. So one of the things Abu Mashar says is if there's a mutable sign, you also want to take into account the Libra chart for the quality of the year. So because this had a mutable rising sign, we do actually want to take into account our Libra chart. And then again, I'm going to move this forward about 1 minute, and I'm going to make sure the location is for exactly where we want it to be. This is always good to do when you're working with astrology. Moving it forward 1 minute. There we go. Okay, so now we have back to our initial Libra chart. As you can see, Libra season begins around 2:50 a.m. on the 23rd of September Eastern time. So you can adjust your time zone to be able to know roughly when the sun is coming into Libra. For you, it's super easy to spot because the sun hits 0 degrees and 0 minutes of Libra. If you find that on any chart and just move it forward or find the right time, you will be all set if there's something that you wanted to do in particular to commemorate this. Then what we see, hearkening back to our Abu Mashar thing about the Aries equinox having a mutable sign, now we're also looking at the Libra chart, which has a fixed sign. Leo is rising here. There's a couple interesting things we can see here. While there is no aspect between the sun and Venus, what we see here is Leo, which is the sun's sign, and that is where Venus is, and Libra, which is Venus's sign, which is where the sun is. This is called an exchange of domicile in a lot of ancient texts. We know it in modern times as we just call it mutual reception. The two planets are actually kind of giving each other a bit of a boost, even though they're sextile by sign, but they also have this mutual reception. So it's like a little phone line between the two of them, giving each other motivation and support, which the sun really does benefit from, being in Venus's sign and having that mutual reception. So if we look at this chart, there's a lot of roads that lead back to Venus in Leo as helping us to set the tone, not only for Libra season, but also for the rest of this year, and really kind of cashing in on the promise of the year when we think about this in context of having a say in the tone of the zodiacal year in general. So we see that the Venus in Leo, which has been just a hallmark of this whole year anyway, since this is where she was having her retrograde. She's not even out of her shadow phase yet. And she is now visible, which is good. She is far enough away from the sun that she is rising in the morning, and you would be able to see her rising over the horizon before the sun made the sky too bright for you to see. So there is that going for her. She's visible. She can do what she wants to do. She can actually enact the things that she is trying to bring about. And she's in Leo, so she's still really focused on being seen, being understood, setting examples, leadership, those kinds of things, passions and compassion, all of those things that really allow joy to be expressed, which is something that Venus does like as well. Jupiter is in Venus's sign up here in Taurus, so Jupiter actually answers back to Venus. One of the things we look at is the triplicity rulers. So if this is a fire rising, we would look at the triplicity rulers of fire, which is actually your diurnal planets. So that would be the Sun, Jupiter, and Saturn. And each of these, in a way, actually do respond back to Venus. Jupiter and the Sun are in Venus's domicile. Saturn is not in Venus's domicile, but in some cases, we actually do see, especially in medieval astrology, where they will say if the exaltation ruler has an effect, this could be a case too. So Saturn is in Pisces, which is the exaltation of Venus. So there is a case to be made that perhaps Venus kind of is connected in that way as well. Looking at a couple other things, we do notice just in general, Mars is in detriment, also ruled by Venus. So we see that this is all kind of walking back to Venus as well. The only person who doesn't have some kind of connection back to Venus of the traditional planets is Mercury, who is actually domicile and exalted on their own, and the Moon, who is also detriment in Capricorn. So there's a lot of indicators of energy not being quite abundant for Libra season, and maybe momentum not being as much as we want, but the desire definitely being there. So when it comes to Libra season, one of the things I'm saying for our personal world that we can focus on in our own lives, especially for this month, is that this is a time of perhaps conserving energy, resting and replenishing, honoring the ability to be mindful and to take things at our own pace, whatever pace that is comfortable for us. So the affirmation I've created for this is, my energy is my greatest guide, so that you can trust whether your energy is excited for something, is feeling a little bit low for something, whether you need to rest, whether you have a ton of energy to expend. And so my energy is my greatest guide. This is a great time to rearrange your schedules and your routine, to prioritize things that you want to be doing that light you up the way Leo lights up Venus. and also to honor your right to rest. Perhaps you will have more alignment with what it is that you want if you give yourself time to rest, recalibrate, and refocus on what it is that is important to you. So knowing that some of that energy is also what we're getting for the rest of the year is also part of what we've been experiencing with our mundane things. I talk more about mundane astrology in my Patreon for the I believe it's the magical realism tier or the making magic tier. One of those, probably both of those for sure, have it. If you wanted to get more into traditional astrology by being able to cite things like Abu Mashar, you can actually join our ancient and traditional source text book club, where every month we go together through a source text and understand things with collaboration, with community from the sources so that we can understand and process it all together. So that is one of my favorite things that I get to do right now. And if you're interested in it, you can head over to Patreon. I'll even link it in the comment below or the description here. And as always, you can find me on the social media platforms as Magic Sprechen, Spreken, which is the High German word for speak. So magic speak. And I look forward to being able to process Libra season with all of you. I hope you have an abundant, wonderful, beautiful season where you do align with your energy, where you do find balance, and you find everything it is that you are looking for.